And you spent more time, by the way, designing our logo and designing the colors than actual coding. So that was a very, very, very poor attempt at entrepreneurship again.
Interesting. Aaron, you're telling me about the differences, you've been on both the business side of things and you've been on the technical side of things. So while you were looking for when others approached you to be the technical co-founder, what were some pet peeves that you had coming from business people looking for technical co-founders?
Okay, sure. This is going to be potentially long. I'll keep it interesting. Quick show of hands. Can I see who here's technical? As in can build stuff, websites, etc. Okay, so maybe like 10%. Who here's non-technical, doesn't know how to build? Okay, so majority of people. Okay, so for all the non-technical people here, having been on both sides, I think common mistakes that I see, especially, I grew up in the US, I'm Singaporean, but I've been back for, I don't know, like 10, 11 years. And in the startup scene, I saw a lot of people saying, look, I have this great idea. It's going to be Uber for X, or it's going to be like this booking app for spas that are in this thing or whatever. And they think that their idea is the most amazing thing, and they just need someone to build it. Like, you hear this all the time. I just need someone to build it. That's it. And what I realized is that the building part is easy. The building part is super, super easy. Almost anything that you can come up with, find one of those people that raise their hands for the technical side, they can build it. They can probably build it in a weekend, honestly. That's the easy part. The hard part is all the stuff that you need to do as the business side, which is getting customers, convincing investors, hiring a team, getting everyone on board, convincing some of the best talent to come in at 1/10 of their pay, so on and so forth. The list is endless. And the reality is the technical person can probably deliver close to 100%, whatever you come up with, and they can do it in a very short amount of time. And the reality is, whatever things that you need to do, you probably have, I don't know, maybe 20 to 30% chance at best of reaching that. And when you go to someone that's technical and you're like, look, just do this thing, and I'll give you like 5%. They feel, one, very marginalized. No one wants to feel that way. It's the equivalent of if someone came up to you and it's like, look, I have this great product. You're a business person, right? Here's this product. It costs $5 to make. Sell for $20, we have a business. That's it. That's all you need to do. And so if you think about it in this way, then you start to understand, I guess, the power dynamic and like what needs to be done. And so the recommendation that I always give them is, look, you don't need to have a product to start getting traction. I mean, at EF, we always went out and talked to customers first. You can do mock-ups really, really easily now. You can just fake that you have a product and just try and sell it. If you look at Kickstarter, these people haven't even built anything yet, but they're doing hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in sales. If you have something like that with traction, your technical co-founders will come and find you because you've already done your work rather than coming up with an idea. And just telling them, oh, just build this thing and we'll have a business. Because frankly speaking, you're going to have a much, much harder time trying to do your side of the role than they are having theirs. And yeah, no, I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah. Davina, what do you say about how important is the idea in finding the right co-founder? Would you prioritize the idea over how you get along, or is the big picture or the vision enough to keep a team together?
So, so at EF, I went through 2 breakups, or maybe 3, I don't remember anymore, before I found my final co-founder. Pretty much after I had given up, I didn't want to meet anymore or anyone else, not waste time convincing them about what I want to do. And it was literally because of my mentor at EF who pushed me to meet this person for 2 weeks before I finally met him. Now, this might be very unique to me because I am, in general, a very intuitive person. And I take a lot of decisions on an intuitive basis, especially with regards to people. So actually, when I met Zan for the first time, I was in this really bad space where I was like, I don't think I'm going to go find my co-founder here, and I'm going to do this on my own. I don't know how I'm going to deliver. I'll find someone, but it's not going to be from EF. Given up. I meet this guy and spend 30 minutes with him. He asked me a few bunch of questions, and we're like, whatever, just basic stuff. I didn't sell him anything. I didn't sell him the idea. I didn't sell him the industry, nothing. Like bare basics, A, B, C, D, E, F. Take it or leave it. Literally, I went like that, and I was like, I'm not interested in selling you anything. Go home. 3 hours later, I get this really long analytical mail from this guy. And my first reaction was, he actually expects me to answer this stuff. I sleep on it. Next morning, I again wake up and I read through these questions. I'm like, this guy's really done his, like, he's really thought this through. So I sat down to answer his email, went back. Next day, I again get back a bunch of questions saying that I asked my friends in finance space, and this is what they have to say about your idea. He was actually going through this step by step in a very methodical manner. I found that very impressive, that this person is not being, he's not taking a quick emotional decision. He's very rational, very different from me, you know. He's not intuitive in his actions at all, whereas I am. And that went on for that entire week. 4 emails exchanged. The next Monday we meet again. And by then, through those interactions, I kind of realized that he's really thinking it through, and this is in for long term. So for me, some of the things that were very important was the person's background should be to a certain extent relevant to what I want to build, which is an enterprise level software which should be scalable. So if someone doesn't have that kind of experience, may not work for me as a CTO. So I wanted somebody who has been in startups, has that experience, is slightly like older. So yeah, I was a bit of an ageist, which in EF, like everyone was telling me like, you're just being too selective and stuff. But I guess I had those criteria in my head, and I got lucky to find that person. Another thing that really worked well for us was that we were both at the same stage of life with the same ideas and values, which kept us, which kind of got us to bond with each other very quickly. Both of us have small children. We both have the same family values. So actually, this was something that worried a lot of our mentors and people like Techno. He was always going crazy about the fact that we do not go out for coffees, we don't go out for drinks, unlike other teams which are bonding after work. We literally met in the morning, worked all day, evening we're back to our families. Not even once. The first time me and him had a meal together or coffee together was this year when our entire team went out for the first team meeting. And I told this to my team members and they couldn't believe it. Really, you both are going out for the meal for the first time? But it worked for us because we really, both of us have that same set of values. We come in, we're really intense during the work. After that, we go home and do our own stuff. Another thing that worked very well for us is that we both don't step on each other's toes. And there is a huge amount of trust that got built up. And it did not happen automatically, of course. We've gone through some bad phases, so I guess we will cover that later. But that has been a very good bonding experience for us. But because of these set of values, the visions, when I asked him, for example, why are you going to do this with me? I didn't want to hear an answer I'm just here for fun, I'll figure it out, and if nothing else works out in EF, I have a job to go back to. So, somebody who knows that, I'm like me, he has burned the bridges. There is no way to go back. You have to make this work. So somebody with that level of commitment was extremely essential. So he had all those, I guess our set of values, our visions were so similar, and our state of life was so similar that we understood each other very, very well. I think within a month, I had told EF that I'm ready to set up a business with him, and they were like, you're not going to incorporate the company yet because you're too young as a team. But for me, it was yeah, I'm ready to marry him. I've decided, yeah. So I guess that's how we went.
Amazing. Those are really good pointers. Vish, this one's for you. What would you say are some red flags to watch out for in your first initial conversations with founders, potential founders?
Okay. So I've been through 4 co-founders till I found my co-founder, and I think I did a lot of mistakes along the way. And I think, just adding on to the previous question as well, I think there are really just 2 things that you need to care about when you're finding a co-founder. One is the idea, and the other is the sort of culture fit, what you talked about, something that works for between the 2 of you guys. And I think, a lot of us here would have used Tinder. It's in Tinder, the typical process is this. You see the picture, then you see the description, and then you make a decision, right? It's like that. So it starts with the idea first. See if the idea resonates with you. And if it does, because that's the idea that you're going to be working on for the next 4 to 5 years if all things go well. And you start off with that, and then you sort of test the relationship with everyone, right? So cultural fit is not something you can figure out in 1 to 2 weeks. If you can, awesome. But there's a lot of factors that come in place. Because in a lot of ways, an entrepreneur's journey is very zigzag. The highs are very high, the lows are very low. You got to test everything. Like, you have to have fun during your victories and share the sorrow and share the responsibility over that. And this is not something you can easily figure out. It's a very, very, very hard decision. So I think I was very quick to jump on really cool ideas first. So my first factor was always like, "Ooh, this is an amazing idea. Let's just do it." And I remember, like, my first idea was I wanted to send cube satellites into space. Do I know anything about math? No. And yeah, I mean, I actually wanted to work with Tuhina because her idea was so cool. I was like, yes, crypto, let's do it. Do I know anything about crypto? No. So for me, it's more like figuring out. I mean, I came to EF thinking I could do anything. You know, it's like, you're awesome, man. You know, we can kick ass and all that stuff. But then I had difficulty finding out what I really wanted. But then through the process of elimination, I figured out that what I'm actually passionate about is I can build good products, and I love to travel. And is there someone who fits that criteria in the cohort? There's one guy. I think after my last breakup, it literally took this guy a second. He immediately texted me, like, "Hey, do you want coffee?" I was like, "Okay, that's too fast, man. Like, you're moving too fast here." But yes, we met, and turned out that, okay, one, we were passionate about travel. I liked the idea that he came to me with. And then we were kind of the same age, and I'd say we were very similar people in a lot of ways. And the way I explained to investors also is like, if we were both college mates, we'd probably be in the same band, right? And then they were like, "Oh, so cute." Yeah. Yeah.
So different from me because me and Zan are polar opposites. He's like Zen. Like, I can tell him, "Dude, we just got the IPA from MAS." Like, oh my God. And he's like, "Okay, what next?" He is completely opposite of me. So which works really well for us because there are times I get so frustrated with certain things and he's the one I go to and I can just rant out to him and he'll just like listen and then give me some kind of a Zen advice, which pretty much is like, "All right, now go and do your job." So
Yeah.
that really works for us.
Yeah.
Very, very, like we are polar opposites in our temperaments.
Yeah, that's true. I think being the polar opposite really helps. Like, there are some points that me and my co-founder where, let's say one of the partners dropped off, and then we're both like sad, like, you know, what do we do? And then until one of us is like, "Dude, snap out of it." And it takes some time, you know. One of us has to be different at some point. What about you? Like, what's your scene?
Co-founder relationship? Yeah, so my first two co-founders in EF were, you know, one was like pure technical PhD, literally 3 postdocs, crazy on that end. The second one was pure business, you know, like double degree from Yale, Harvard MBA, bunch of time in Blackstone and investment banking, private equity, et cetera, et cetera. And my third one is actually really, really similar to me. We're both full stack developers. We've both started startups before. We both worked in startups. We probably have like 80% skill overlap, which from an EF perspective was like, no, you guys are too similar. But I think what worked really well for us was, first thing, non-hard skill side, we completely align in terms of why are we building this. We're like, this is not our first company. We know exactly what we need to do. We know exactly what we shouldn't focus on. We're not here for glamour or for press articles or for you know, like impressing others. This is what we're doing, and we know what's in front of us. And the second thing is that we respected each other's skill sets. So although he's the CTO and I can do some stuff in some technical stuff better than him, his decision's the decision at the end of the day. And like, we fight all the time, But once the decision is made, then he gets behind it. And he knows a lot more on the business side, on like in marketing stuff and online stuff than I do. But at the end of the day, when I make a decision, he gets behind it. And I think that's the most important thing. Regardless of the amount of overlap that you have, as long as you respect each other's decisions, and whether or not you have the expertise for you to go and tell someone, look, this is how you should do it, or you shouldn't be doing that, etc. If they're really your co-founder and they're not an intern, or they're not like an outsourced person that you're hiring, then you really need to respect their, not just their skill sets, but their decisions, even if they're not the best ones. I think a joint decision's better than, like the optimal decision.
One of the questions that we got from the audience when they were signing up was, how do I speak to a lot of technical people and gauge their interest without spending too much time detailing my idea? And what if they go out and build it themselves? How secretive or open do you think a business person should be when they're speaking about their ideas to technical people?
You can't get more open than what you should be. Like, you have to be absolutely open. Whether you're speaking to your technical co-founder or to investors or whatever, I think there is no idea that you can think of that has not already been thought of by 10 other people, believe me. Like, it's just, you have competition everywhere. And it is really not about the ideas. It is only and only about execution. So especially if you're going to, like, you really want to get somebody else to buy into your idea, more importantly for them to trust you, you have to start with the point of trust, and you have to give it your all, because if you cannot convince him, then you can't convince anyone else, right? So completely open, completely.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think in Asia, generally, people are a bit more secretive about their ideas. And amongst first-time founders as well, it's like, oh no, I can't tell anyone, what if they steal it, etc. If you want to do a test, go out and like talk to 10 people and just like convince them to steal your idea. Like, no one wants to even listen to your idea. No one's going to bother stealing it. And if the only thing separating you from success and failure is that you had like a couple weeks or a couple months head start over someone else, you're pretty much doomed to begin with. So opinion on that, I'd say just be completely open with it. But on the flip side, I would say focus less about the idea. The idea that you have right now is probably pretty bad. I would say more often than not, focus on the problem that you want to solve. The idea will change. And why you want to do this is, instead of like coming with an idea and going back to what we talked about earlier, like technical people don't like to be like boxed in and just like a cog of an already created machine. Don't say, well, here's the idea and this is exactly what you're going to do. Because if you go to them with the problem that you're trying to solve and why it's a big problem, and investors care more about the problem than your idea anyways. This is a big problem, this is why it's important, etc., etc. One, see how excited they are in solving that problem. If they don't like solving that problem, if they're not as interested in it as you are, then when your customers suck, when your product sucks, when everything sucks, which it will many times a month, they're not going to stick with you. So one, they need to be interested about the problem. Two, you guys need to come up with a solution together. Again, you're looking for a co-founder. You're not looking for like a hired intern or a contractor or whatever. So by definition, they need to have ownership, and ownership is also ownership of the idea that they helped you come up with as well. And they may or may not go along with the idea that you have, but if you're doing it right, you're worried about solving the problem rather than proving that your idea is the best one. And I tell this to actually every batch in EF. I say, don't go to technical people and say, look, I saw that you had a PhD in this field. This is what you're going to do for my company. Go to them, and you can, again, just go to like 10 different people and say, this is the problem. How would you solve it? And all of those people are going to have really unique ways of looking at it and really unique experiences that you hadn't even thought of how that could be applied. And that's how you get the perfect idea for your team. Because when you go to raise money, investors are going to say, yeah, this is a great idea, but why are you people the best? And if you're not the best team to be working on it, they're not going to give you money. They're going to find someone else. But if you guys or girls came up with this idea together, you both contributed it. it taps onto both of your experiences and passions, etc., then the idea will be a natural evolution of that. And answering that question of why you two are the best team to work on this becomes really, really, really natural. So I'd highly suggest be really, really open about the idea, but be more open about the problem. See how excited they are about the problem, and together come up with a solution that I guarantee will be better than something that you came up with on your own, and will be something that you build together rather than hire an outsourced person to do.
Mm-hmm. Use this one instead.
Yeah, it's not working. An anecdote on this one. The first two people on EF who I thought were absolute perfect fits for, to be my co-founder, and I'd reached out to them way before the program started, and we had like God knows how many gazillion coffees before we started. I thought that I'd found my co-founder. The fact that I had all those coffees and I discussed the idea to depth with them, and we brainstormed on what is required to build it out. Both of them during that process one person realized that he isn't that excited by the end result that we're trying to create. And the second person felt that he is going to go out of the technical depth on this topic very soon, because he felt that the cybersecurity aspects required for my solution or what we're trying to build is something that he was not comfortable with. And even though I told him like we're going to hire someone else with that skill set that's missing, he was not comfortable. He was like, I don't feel comfortable being CTO of a company who will not have the skill set. So just because we had that level of detailed discussion, we were able to assess that we're probably not going to work together on that.
Vish, what did you look for what advice would you give to business people trying to get you to work with them?
Interesting. Oh, okay. Interesting question. I still find it difficult to explain tech to business people, including my co-founder. But I think the secret lies in the detail, is like how much detail can they handle. So if I were to explain how a login system works with like JWT token, username, hashings, and blah, 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 they're going to be like, pfft. But if I were to just say, hey, we need a login page, and that's going to take like so much time to build, this is how it's going to look, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, that makes sense, right? So I think as a technical person, to work with a business person, I think first thing we need to do is figure out the complementary skill sets that we sort of need. I knew in my case that I could build a product that's end-to-end, that works well, that people will love. And he knew how to get the partnerships going, take on the other side of the story, if you will. So again, Split is all about partnering with airlines, travel agents, so that Split becomes an option on their website. And he already had these partnerships with airlines, like take Malaysia Airlines, Singapore Airlines. He knew them. So, okay, so you can go sign up these merchants. I can build the product, and then we make a lot of money. It seems very simple, but that's really how it started, It kind of made sense, and just kind of go through it. Again, figure out something you can solve together, and as Aaron said, it needs to be a combined effort of you and your co-founder. No one's working for you, and you're not working for anyone. I think that's sort of the idea.
Right. And when you meet someone for the first time, whether at EF or before EF, as you were doing before, how would you gauge their level of dedication, if they're in it for the long term, or you think they might bail when the next big idea arrives? You?
I think, it's going to take a lot of time. Again, is the idea that one is the way you pitch an idea and see how they solve a problem. Or I think the other way is they pitch an idea, and that's an indication of what they're interested in. So this way you can sort of be like, hey, is this something I'm interested in, or is this something they're interested in? Kind of gauge that. And the second part is your fit with the other person, and that's going to take a long, long time to get.
I think there's two parts in assessing someone for the first time. So one is like, should they be starting a startup, or should you be starting a startup with them? And the second thing is, like as a technical person, are they a good fit for you? Somewhat related, but I think the first thing, a lot of people will say, yes, I want to start a startup. I've always wanted to do one. I want to quit my job one day, blah, 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 blah. But if they haven't done that yet, if they haven't taken that leap of faith, and maybe it's not quitting their job, but if they haven't even, spent a couple of weekends doing something other than, watching YouTube videos and blogs on Medium about why it's cool to start a startup, then they're probably not that level of commitment yet, right? And do you really want to be the one that's like dragging them out and convincing them to do it? Because honestly, before you start is like the most idealistic part of it, when like you think everything's going to go well and everything's awesome. But once you start, that's where it gets really, really tough. And it gets harder from there. So you need to make sure that they're prepared for the struggle that is startups, and they're not just like living in a dream. The second thing is, if you're a non-technical co-founder assessing a technical co-founder specifically, I would say, like without going to specific skill sets, have they built anything before? And not have they built something for the project at school or for the company or whatever. Like everyone does that because that's their job. Mm-hmm. But have they built something and launched something out of their own interest and passion? Because anyone that's going to be starting up a company on the technical side needs to really care about this project, and they're doing it internally, not because someone gave them money to do it, not because their boss told them to do it, but because they're genuinely interested in that. And I think that if someone hasn't done that, and if you're technical, the bar is so low to do that, you can literally build something in days, then you should really consider whether or not this person really is someone that is passionate about building products and starting a company, or someone that's just interested at the thought of starting a company, but hasn't really done anything to move further in that.
So I asked very specific questions. My first question was, why are you at EF? Like, what's the motivating factor? And that was very important. So for my co-founder, the answer was like quite convincing. He had been in startups for a while, and the last two startups he had led the teams, and he was the CTO at. They both actually had successful exits. One was bought over, the other one was listed on a stock exchange. But he didn't get to participate in that entire thing. And now he had this whole burning desire that I want to do this again, but this time with an equity stake myself. So he has gone through the experience. He has, before these two successful startups, he's had some string of failures as well. None of them started by him, but he's been through that grind. He knows what it takes to build a startup, to build up a team from scratch, to build a product from scratch and scale it up. So he knows what he's in for. So the second question was, you are like, what are your backup options? What if this doesn't work out? What are you looking for? And my third question was, what happens when you don't get paid for months? Like, how is your family going to support itself? And for how long can they support themselves? So that's critical for me to know what kind of time path are you looking at? What if we don't pay ourselves for 2 years? Which in our case is actually true. We've raised our seed round, but as founders, we chose not to pay ourselves. So we probably are the only ones on the cohort getting zero money for God knows how long now. So we had done that assessment, like who's going to support you, all of this. And somebody who has thought that through already means that he is in for the long haul. So I guess that was one of the important things for me.
I have one very highly rated question from the audience here. What is the typical equity split between founders?
It's an easy question on EF cohort, right? For EF, it was very simple, 50-50. Both of you are equally founding the company, and if you don't look at it that way, then it doesn't make sense. You both have to have equal partnership. And to be honest, one of the investors who invested in us played the devil with both of us. And he actually tested me a lot by saying that you come from a finance background, you know your worth, you know your last salary, it's like, so many more times than what he was making on the tech side. And you have the vision, you're like, as far as I'm concerned, you're like 70% of the business, and he's only 30% of the business. Why should you both hold 50%? And he tried to drive this wedge between us, like seriously, like in 3 meetings. just before the term sheet, he again told me, you should consider revising this whole thing, because I think at some point of time, you both may not have the same vision for the company. Then who drives it? What if your company splits? I'm worried about it. So he gave me all kinds of very seemingly good idea, like why he thinks this is a good idea for us to like rethink the split of the company. And even after that, he was like, so when you do end up taking salaries, you should consider not taking equal salaries and stuff. And I handle those questions like, when we take salary, we'll decide at that time. Why am I like dealing with a hypothetical question of this today? And I actually went back and I told Zan, like, he did this with me in these 3 meetings. If he ever meets you alone, expect something like this to happen to you as well. And I think he's just trying to test how much we can trust each other, how much we work with each other, or at least that was my assessment. I'm not sure about the intentions, but that's how we dealt with it.
I had a similar insight, but not from an investor. So me and my co-founder, so we had different lifestyles, I guess, and commitments, financial commitments. So he had a lot more financial commitments than I have. So we had this debate about, should he be taking more salary than I am? My first thought was like, what? Like, you can't do it. And it was like $200 more for all, it's nothing. But then the thought does come in, like, like, what does it mean? Like, I should get a little bit more equity because of that. But I think, we did talk about it, and we were like, this does not matter at all in the long run. What matters now is we build a good product, we focus on getting our funding, crossing IC, yes. So I think that debate was interesting and important. It's kind of solved a lot of culture problems for us. Like, it was okay that he took more because, yes, that's just how it is. But keep your eyes on the prize. And I think just seconding Tohina's thoughts, 50-50 should be the split. Otherwise, you're starting something on the wrong footing. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also agree on 50-50 generally. In terms of equity, pay can differ depending on like costs and lifestyle, etc. Like if someone's married and someone's single, or someone has kids, then obviously that needs to be talked about. But I think starting 50-50 is just, a sensible starting point if both of you are starting from scratch. And I think that only really starts to tilt when one person is bringing in a lot of traction or a lot of progress, and an idea is not traction nor is it progress. So like idea premium, I would generally say is like 0. But if someone, like if you come and you have the idea and you have 10 customers that are going to commit, $50,000, even $50,000 a year, and the other person comes in, then yes, you've already started the company in a way, and maybe you can argue for a bit more in that case. Or if the other person has already built something that would have taken 2 years to build, and they're coming in with this, and so you're jumping start a lot, maybe they can get a bit more. But if you're both starting with a fresh new idea, regardless of whose idea it is, there's no customers, there's no product, none of that's done yet, then typically 50-50. And like a couple weeks extra isn't much. I'd say like if it's like 4 to 6 months or more, that's when you start to really tip the scales in terms of a non-50-50 split, in my opinion. Otherwise, people will just, like the other person will just think that, well, I only own X%, therefore I'm only going to do X% of this work. Yeah, they're not going to be as committed. So again, like if you're really looking for a co-founder, you should be prepared to like split the ownership, split the idea, everything. Otherwise, maybe you should be looking for someone that you can hire.
So if money were not a problem and you didn't need to raise VC money, and you were the business person in that mix, let's say, would you prefer a technical co-founder or hire a great CTO? People that are already thinking of, do I really need a co-founder, or can I just hire a VP of tech or a CTO? What would your advice be to them?
For me, it has to be a co-founder. When you're starting out, your relationship with a co-founder is very different. Like a co-founder versus a hired person is very, very different. Like the amount of stuff I can share with my co-founder I cannot share that with my employees. I feel a fiduciary responsibility towards my employees. And so I feel like I can't unburden my worries. I have to only give them certain type of information that they need to get their job done, and giving them anything more is like unnecessary cluttering them up. With Zan, I can be like completely open and just rant, and sometimes just go like, I'm actually going to rant right now. I can do that with my co-founder. And more importantly, I think it's about ownership. So for me, it's like this person has to be with me from start till the end. So if I don't have that commitment or don't sense that commitment, it's not a great place to start from. So hiring a CTO doesn't work that way then. They always have the option to leave. And I believe that about even the first set of team that you build out. So anybody who comes to me with like before Series A, every single person with me is somebody who I'm looking at from the perspective that are you going to stay with me, and can I make sure that value gets added to you over the next 3, 4, 5 years till our exit happens. If I can't create value for you until that long, then you're probably not the right person to work with me. I don't want a software developer to join me with the idea that I'll jump away after a year. And that's actually a contention that me and Zan had when we were hiring. Zan was like, techies don't stop that long. They're going to like, you should just hire with the idea that everyone's going to jump away after a year. And I was like, no, we want the right culture, because we're going to build the culture of the company. And after Series A, these people will, hire people under them, and they will pass on that culture to that team. So everyone should have ownership in the company. So I have to be generous with ESOPs to my employees. And if there is somebody who doesn't accept ESOPs, and there are employees who have rejected, they were very good technically, but they didn't want ESOPs. So then their viewpoint is not to stay long and build value for the company as much as they're just like, going to be here for a short while and go. So it's about building that family that will be with you for that long haul, at least in this phase is what I feel. So definitely co-founder over a hired CTO.
I think if I were to start another company, which is not that big, I would probably hire, because I know what it takes to build a product. I know what it takes to get funding. I know what it takes to build a team. If the idea is kind of simple enough, then I'd probably be like, hey, you know what? Let's do this. Let's get this out. Or let's say if I'm starting. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you will be starting it out in the first place, because it would have been frittered away by competition anyway.
Exactly, yeah. So if that case happens, then I'd be like, hey, you know what? Let me get a CTO, and this is what you're supposed to do. And yeah, if it's that simple. But I wouldn't do that for my first time, because I really don't know what's going to happen. That's when I think if I'm alone, I'd probably mess it up big time. But if I have a co-founder, then whatever you said totally applies. So I think it's case by case. So the point was, if it's your first time starting a company, do it with a co-founder. It's nicer, easier, way more fun.
Yeah, I'll be a bit in between that. So, repeating the question, it's, if you want someone technical, do you get a technical co-founder, or do you hire someone technical as a CTO or VP engineering or software engineer, whatever label that you want? And I'd say it really depends on what the idea and solution is that you want to solve, and how technical is that. The reality is most companies are not really technical, and so they may not need a technical co-founder, right? If you're if you're doing something like WeWork, controversial, yeah, it's not a tech company. You don't need a co-founder that's technical to build all this stuff. You need someone that goes out, and maybe you need a COO. Maybe you need a co-founder that's non-technical, and maybe you can do enough stuff. But I think many people have ideas that are relatively non-technical. You can use technology. You may have an app, you may have a website, but unless that technology is the core function of your business, then you may not need, a technical co-founder. It's like, if you're creating an accounting firm, you probably need a co-founder that knows accounting. But if you're starting, like a restaurant, yes, you're gonna have to do accounting, but you don't need an accounting co-founder. So similarly, if you need to be truthful about how much technology do you really, really need? If you're building a marketplace and someone can build it relatively easy using off-the-shelf software, or you can even pay someone or do it yourself, that's completely fine, because the value is not going to be in the technology. It's going to be in the market that you build, or the customers, or the reputation, or the brand, or whatever that you have. So I'd say like take a hard look. How technical is your idea really? If it's really technical and like technical people get really excited about it, then you probably need a technical co-founder. If someone technical is like, yeah, I could build that in a week, which honestly a lot of ideas are, then maybe you can just hire that out and save the equity for other things.
Makes sense. All three of you have obviously been through EF and have had a more, at least within EF, you've had a more structured way to find a co-founder. Commitment was probably not that big an issue if they already quit their jobs to come to EF. But what advice do you have for others that might not be planning to join EF? Where would you advise them to look at to find the right kind of technical talent?
So I have been away from the technical world, or my technical roots, for nearly 14 years before I decided to do this on my own. Needless to say, I had very, very few technical people left in my active network. Almost everyone's moved over to the business side of things. So the real reason, I actually wouldn't know where to go for a technical co-founder. Very, very bad to answer that. The real reason I came to EF, and when I was asked, why do you want to join EF? There were only two reasons. One, I wanted to find a good pool from where I could potentially find a good technical co-founder. And the second was because it was easy to get my entrepreneur pass through. These were the two reasons I came to entrepreneur first. Yeah.
You wanna go? Okay. I think statistically speaking, like most unicorns, the founders knew each other, or at least that's the story they tell us. It's like they knew each other, and they're like, oh, I know this guy. We've known each other for like X years. And if you have ever applied to Y Combinator, this is actually a question: how long have you known your co-founder? So that's kind of key, right? You need to know this person for quite a bit of time to kind of bounce off ideas, figure out your cultural aspect of compatibility, and so on. So I think if you are to go find a co-founder outside of a program like EF, what I'd say is have a backing which can help you have time, right? For example, you have a job and you want to start something with one of your colleagues, right? So you have a job, you have the stability, and time's not really a concern, and money is not a concern. There's a higher chance that you could knock something off and make something, and then that goes out. Yes, great traction, great validation. Quit your jobs together and start the company. So this is just an example, but then all this was possible because one, you had time together, and the other is you didn't have any financial commitments. You were fine. You could spend more time on this. So I think that's very, very important. And I think one of the things that EF provided was this: like you get a stipend, and you don't have to worry about most, just going out alone. So it kind of helped.
So this question comes up a lot in terms of, okay, where's this magical place that I can go where I'm going to find a bunch of technical co-founders, and I'm going to interview all of them, and then I'm going to choose the best one, right? There's no secret bar somewhere where they're all hiding. The reality is, okay, one, you've probably exhausted your personal networks and your friends of friends and stuff like that. And therefore, you're looking for other places to find a technical co-founder. And the reality is, you already know where these places are. You can go to universities, you can go to Facebook or Google, etc. But the harsh truth is, none of these people want to be your co-founder. So you can't change how technical they are or where they are, etc. But what you can change is how appealing you are as a potential co-founder. And again, even if you walk into a room, if everyone here was technical and they want to start a company, and you walked in as the only business person, and you're like, well, I have this idea, but I haven't worked on it, but it's going to be really cool, none of them will want to co-found with you. So it's not about finding technical people. You know where to find these people, but it's about making yourself more attractive to the technical people that you do meet, so that they will want to co-found with you, or so that they will refer their friend to you. Everyone has a friend that wants to start a company, and some of those people are technical, some people are non-technical, and you can only meet so many people, but are they going to tell their other friend, hey, I met this guy or girl the other day working on something really, really interesting, they have these many customers, or they've done this or that, you guys should really talk. Are you going to be in that position, or are you just limiting yourself to like trying to sell yourself and your idea to every person that you meet physically? And so I think instead of trying to find where these secret people are, make yourself more attractive. I mean, in a way, have them come to you, or make yourself more appealing, I think is what you should probably focus on top of going to the specific places to find them.
Thanks. We're going to take another question from the audience, where what are the most common conflicts or misalignments that you have between two co-founders, especially between one owning the business and one owning the technology?
I guess I can start. Common things. So like my co-founder and I debate all the time, and I think it's a really, like both of us had this quality, and we wrote it in our profiles in EF, that like we want someone that we can fight with all the time, but then once a decision's made, then we get behind it. So like we probably spend at least like 2 to 3 hours a day bickering about like random stuff, but we always get to like the best solution that we're both happy with, or that we both get behind. So, sorry, I forgot the question. What was the question? I was going somewhere with it, but.
Okay, what do you bicker over?
Okay, what do we bicker over? Everything from, like, okay, should we discount for this customer? Should we, extend the free trial? Hey, this thing crashed, and it's really important to this person, but these other 10 people don't care about it. Should we spend 2 weeks fixing it? Should we move things 3 pixels to the left, so on and so forth? There's like all this stuff will come up, and it's almost never the really big things that kill you. It's just like the incessant small little things of, gosh, you keep telling me it's going to take too much time, but like that's your job, and you keep pushing these like small, minuscule requirements on me. This is not pushing the company forward. I think as long as the relationship is strong, then that should be fine. Usually, like the really big stuff like hiring or fundraising and stuff like that, at least in our case, has been quite smooth because we put a lot of intention into that, and like I guess focus on getting to the best conclusion. But if you guys aren't aligned, then like the small daily decisions will really wear you down. Yeah.
Tuhina.
We have very different way of dealing with things. We both don't step on each other's toes at all. Very clear responsibilities. You handle ABC, I handle DEF, and that makes life very easy for both of us, including when we were actually going out for raising funds. Most teams would have probably gone together. I think you always went together, right? Both of you? You didn't? You went together. I saw most EF teams always go together, and that was the general expectation from investors. So they were always surprised when I walked in alone for the meetings. And I told them very clearly that my co-founder is busy building the product. He doesn't need to be here until we reach a certain point in conversation where you need to assess my co-founder, so he's not going to waste his time with you. And that's been the general way we have dealt with most stuff in our lives. Whenever we need to have discussions, we, like Zan is amazing at summarizing the pending discussions, and I keep receiving those mails. And then we sit down and discuss. I think the 2-3 times where we actually had a massive misalignment, and there was a lot of discontent brewing inside of me, where I was beginning to question whether this relationship is in for, like, are we in this for long term, or whether I made a wrong decision, were basically misalignments of expectations, where he actually told me about a certain skill set, where he said, I'm not comfortable about this, and somehow I didn't register it. I was like, yeah, I heard it, but I didn't really register the depth of what you really meant. And I still expected him to perform on that particular skill set. And he didn't eventually. And things really like kind of fell through at a certain point. And there was this whole time, actually just before our IC, where I was given an advice that we should call the whole thing off. They thought that you shouldn't work together. It was in that moment that I decided instead to have like a really clear one-on-one with him, and there's a very clear communication about like what works between us, what didn't, why am I unhappy or why is he unhappy and stuff like that. That was such a good one-on-one where we could tell each other exactly how I feel about a certain action without making the other person wrong, and that space where there was no blame game, but there was a space of authentication. Like you could be very authentic about how you're feeling. I think it really brought us very close together. And we decided to stay together, and we're here today. And after that, twice more. Like it is, I really think it is more a learning exercise for me than for him, where I need to learn how to give feedback and take accountability in a more instant manner. And he teaches me that. So it's like 3 times that we've had a problem has been because I haven't been communicative enough, and every time we opened those channels of communication, things kind of like really improved, and we knew like, okay, why things went wrong and what we need to do to correct it. Other than that, we've no real bickerings.
For us, it was different because we're very similar people, right? And we both wanted to do everything together. Yeah. So, okay, think of if you were to draw a Venn diagram of my responsibilities and my co-founder's responsibilities, it was like almost overlapping. Oh, wow. Except that, I knew a little bit more on the product. He knew more about signing merchants, so it's very close. But I think as time grows and yeah, I know. But I think as time progresses, this will kind of shrink till they become 2 independent things. And if you look at really large companies, the CTO and CEO probably never even meet for weeks or months until they have like monthly catch-ups or something like that. So I guess initially we started doing everything together, going to meetings together, deciding product, deciding copy, deciding what to eat, literally everything. But I think over time, we sort of just knew our responsibilities and kind of moved away from doing redundant things.
Can I add on one more thing in terms of advice for like avoiding these types of conflicts? I think what you want to do is you want to get into a stage where like the only conflicts that you have are like the small day-to-day decisions that don't really have much bearing. That's fine and that's healthy. But what you want to do is you want to get away like the big issues. It's the same with dating, right? Like at the very beginning, right? And like sometimes it's painful to do because you're like, oh, I found this person, this boy or girl, and like they're perfect for me. But you don't want to ask if they want to have kids one day, right? But that's gonna ruin the relationship or marriage, whatever, one day. And so like this type of stuff, you already know going in to an extent what you want out of this company, out of this relationship. Does one person want to just work on this for a few years and then go back and get their MBA or go back to work with this on the resume and it looks really good? Does someone want to just work on this and sell it off in a year for $10 million and that's their definition of success? Does someone want to work on this for a really long time and not raise any venture funding, but make $500,000 a year because it's a profitable business? It could be small, no one may care about it, but you're making a lot of money. If you're not aligned on those from the very beginning, it's going to be the source of all of your like arguments and like the underlying thing driving those decisions, because you're going to have to make decisions. Okay, well, do we make the product better or do we just start selling it? If our product sucks but people want to buy it, is that fine? For some people it's fine. For some people it's like, no, this is my baby, it needs to be better. So I think like in the first 1 or 2 days you can actually get all that off the table. Try and approach it in a way that you're not like leading them to the right answer. Be like, oh, so you want this, right? Don't you want this? Get the real honest answer from them, because otherwise you're just cheating yourself and you're just like setting yourself up for failure in the long run. So I would say like get that out of the way first, and then later on you may have like small arguments, so on and so forth, but don't think that you're doing yourself any favors by avoiding those conversations early on.
All right, we're out of time, but thank you, all three of you, for joining us today, this evening. We're going to be around for the next 30 minutes or so if you have any specific questions for any of them, please grab them right after they get off the stage. And thank you, everyone, for joining in. If you have any questions at all about EF, there are two of us here with EF t-shirts on, so find us. Right. Thank you, everyone.